Well, good evening, everyone. And on behalf of our co-chairs, Adina and Rasquez, Roz and Charles Lowenhaupt, and Julie and Tim Stern, I want to welcome and thank you all so much for joining us during this really difficult time. Now, before we begin, if you have questions at any point during our time together, type them into the chat. We'll use those questions that we see there for our Q&A at the end of the evening. This year is the Jewish Federation of St. Louis's 120th year, and during that time, we have been here to support the Jewish community in St. Louis and around the world in good times and in bad. We've seen our share of emergencies and crises, and each time, Federation has stepped up to help provide stability and support and to make sure Jews everywhere are cared for. And here we are yet again, coming together in a time of crisis to help our brethren halfway across the world. This is exactly what Federation is built for. This is one of the things we can do, that we can provide, that no one else in our community can. And this work we do, this sacred work, is based on a core Jewish value we find encapsulated in the Talmud. Kol Yisrael arevim ze bazeh. All of Israel are responsible for one another. Now, one of the reasons Federation is able to respond so quickly in times of crisis is because of the important and powerful partnership between professional leadership, people like Lori Wishney and Amy Bornstein, who led this effort for this evening's program, and volunteer leadership, who dedicate countless hours to this important work. I want to take a moment to acknowledge and thank a few of those people. Our board chair, Greg Yawitz, the Vice Chair of Development, John Greenberg, our Chair of Major Gifts, Neil Jaffe, Vice Chair of Community Impact, Craig Rosenthal, and Chair of our Israel and Overseas, Shira Berkowitz. And let me take a moment to recognize the Community Impact Department and the work that they do, the work that Craig and Shira and so many others do. I want to acknowledge the members of our Community Impact Committee and the Israel and Overseas Subcommittee have joined us here tonight. That Israel and Overseas Subcommittee is charged with understanding the needs that exist in Israel and around the world and how they relate to our own community's core priorities, to working with our partners in those areas to understand strategies to address those needs, and ultimately to make investment recommendations to the Federation Board of Directors. Our two main partners in achieving our priorities overseas are joining us here tonight: the Jewish Agency for Israel, or JAFI, and the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, or JDC. In addition to the incredible volunteer leadership we have within Federation, we are also proud of those local individuals who participate in the leadership of our national and international partners, like JAFI and JDC. And tonight, you're going to hear from two of them. Heschel Rasquez, a past president of the St. Louis Jewish Federation and current board member at JAFI, and Charles Lowenhaupt, a board member for JDC. They will each introduce a representative from their organization, from the organization they are involved in, who will share an update about what is happening on the ground right now and what their efforts have entailed to date. These efforts are only able to be done because of the generosity of donors like you. And then at the end, we will have some time for questions. Now, before I do that, I want to thank our parent organization and partners at JFNA, the Jewish Federations of North America, for their collaborative approach to responding to the Ukraine's immediate needs. As a national system, JFNA stepped in to coordinate the needs from several different organizations on the ground there and galvanize federations across the country. I'd like to introduce the CEO of JFNA, Eric Fingerhut, to say a few words. And is Eric not here? Well, in that case, we'll move on. Guys, just saved a minute. With that, then, I'd like to turn it over to Heschel Rasquez. Heschel.
Okay, had to unmute myself. So in 2008, Following my term as chair of our St. Louis Federation, I became treasurer of our national federation organization, now known as the Jewish Federations of North America. As treasurer, I was first given the opportunity to attend the meetings of the Jewish Agency for Israel in Israel itself. And then subsequently, as a result of my ongoing interest, I became a member of the Board of Governors of the Jewish Agency. That opportunity to learn in greater detail and be involved in the work of JAFI has motivated me to continue ever since. Most of us know that the agency was the de facto government of the Jewish people prior to the establishment of the State of Israel. With the founding of Israel, the agency was given a permanent relationship with the government to be a representative and a partner as representatives of global Jewry to be partner with the government of Israel. Today, the agency's strategic priorities are threefold: Aliyah, preparing, transit, and helping with settling Jews who choose to live in Israel, connecting Jews worldwide through engagement, whether it be shlichim, partnerships, periods of time in Israel, and third, strengthening Israeli society. But today our focus is on Ukraine, where the Jewish Agency is deeply engaged in exceptionally challenging work, assisting Ukrainian Jews who choose to leave and make Aliyah, and at the same time assist the Jewish community that remains under attack with the entire population of Ukraine. We're very pleased to have the current chair of the Jewish Agency, Michael Siegel, brief us now on the agency's current activities in Ukraine. Michael's from Cleveland, where he was chair of the Jewish Federation in his hometown. He subsequently became chair of the Jewish Federations of North America. And since 2017, he has been chair of the Jewish Agency for Israel. He's been very deeply involved, especially in the last couple of years, with the accomplishments of the agency during the pandemic, and now in the urgent need to assist our fellow Jews in the Ukraine. It's my great pleasure to introduce my friend, Michael Siegel.
Thank you, Heschel. And let me just say, I particularly like the artwork that's behind you. So nothing like a little self-promotion. Anyhow, thank you for the opportunity to present the work that's going on. Obviously, these have been very difficult times. And let me just start out with saying this is a story that we've all heard before. Ground war in Europe. It's the story we never thought would be our story. It's the story of our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents from all over the globe. But this time it's a little bit different. This is the year 2022. And the people of Europe, the people of Ukraine have a land that will welcome them and take care of them, the land of Israel. Now, as the greatest European conflict since the Second World War rages on in the Ukraine, Ukrainian Jews are fearing for their lives, and many are fleeing to survive. The Jewish Agency is on the front lines around the clock, saving the Jews of the Ukraine. Our workers are on the ground, many of whom are actually risking their lives to rescue the nation's Jewish community. We've also sent dedicated teams from Israel to assist in our operations. I'm hoping there's a slide show that goes with this. We have also sent dedicated teams from Israel to assist in our operations and I work closely with our various partners and the communities themselves. Next slide, please. As others are rushing out, we are rushing in to help Jews of the Ukraine. For those who wish to leave, we are doing everything in our power to quickly facilitate that process. For those Jews who wish to remain in Ukraine, we are investing in their community security to make them as safe as possible during the most difficult and dangerous days of their lives. This is an ever-changing situation, and we don't know what we are going to face going forward. It's a daily change. Currently, we're at the highest alert level in terms of emergency management, and therefore our response begins with a 24/7 monitoring, and I truly mean 24/7. We opened a hotline for Jews in the Ukraine and Russia, and our staff in the field and in Israel continue to receive personal calls. So far, we have received close to 10,000 calls in the last few days. And I want to preface that our ability to operate in situations like these as they arise is because of your support for many, many years. Your support, our boots on the ground, make the Jewish Agency's work possible. We can work today only with the infrastructure that was in place yesterday. So thank you all for what you've done in the past. Next slide. As you can see, the Jewish Agency, next slide, please, is spread out over the area with the dark blue pinpoints in the Ukraine and the light blue pinpoints in surrounding countries. To the east, you can see the Russian border. To the north, the Belarusian border, and to the west, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Moldova, all of which we have our eyes on at the moment. We are preparing our operations on both sides of the border of the neighboring countries, as you can see in the light blue pinpoints. At each point of the 5 border crossings, we are helping Jews who want to make Aliyah across the border and then help them with the remaining Aliyah process, or connecting them to the Jewish communities in those countries. As I mentioned before, we have sent dedicated teams from Israel, former shlichim, professionals, to assist in our operations along the border and are working closely with our various partners in the communities themselves. Keep in mind that these specific points can change every day, and they are. And we are monitoring the situation, as we said, 24/7 to prepare to move people on the borders as needed. Next slide, please. The Jewish Agency is always partnering and coordinating with many other different bodies with whom we work inside and outside of Israel. Our plan consists of working at 2 levels, one with the state of Israel in full coordination between the various ministries, and at the second level, working together with local organizations as bodies such as JFNA, Karen Hayasot, and others you can see on the screen. Because of our unique status with the government of Israel, we are participating in different emergency forums of the government, including the Foreign Ministry's Emergency Forum. This helps us assess and prepare for any scenario in full coordination with the government, and also keep, and get the help that we need throughout this situation, together with the Prime Minister's Office, Ellie and Absorption and Diaspora Ministries, and the Education Ministries. Next slide, please. Moving forward, right now, there are 4 main areas of our work during the war in the Ukraine. One of the main focuses of our work right now is the safety and security of refugees and Aliyah candidates. And we'll speak about this as we move forward. The overall process of bringing the refugees to transit facilities and ultimately to Israel as Olim. The second part of our work is supporting the security and resilience of the local community organizations. We are providing grants to 150 Jewish community organizations throughout Ukraine for upgrading security equipment, given the recent escalation. In total, we will provide one-time grants totaling approximately $1.5 billion. We also distributed satellite phones to the communities in the event that the internet and other community networks are unavailable. Our third work area revolves around assisting the government of Israel as needed. While we've spoken about the government of Israel's assistance to the Jewish Agency, our presence on the ground can also help them in their efforts to assist Israelis in the countries of that region. Lastly, we are concerned with taking care of the many program participants, young people from the Ukraine on Jewish Agency programs currently in Israel, like Masa. Just imagine how difficult and heartbreaking it is to be hundreds of miles away from your family in a war zone in the Ukraine and not knowing how you're going to be able to see them ever again. Next slide. Every day, we prepare a dashboard of data that encompasses all of our activities since the beginning of the war, and specifically in the past day. Here you can see just a glimpse of what is happening in the field. We're getting, really, I would tell you today, we've got over 4,000 requests for immediate Aliyah. Last year, we only had 3,100 for the entire year from the country of the Ukraine. We're getting literally over 1,200 calls a day between Russia and the Ukraine and Belarus. We've got 14,000 calls overall, 2,100 beds in our facilities in the Ukraine and the surrounding countries, and 273 people are currently in our facilities that do not include those who are on their way today and have not yet checked in. So we have about 1,000 beds to fill, as we have provided in hotels and apartment buildings for those that are basically moving through the border crossings. Next slide, please. As I began, one of our main areas of work is handling the safety and security of those refugees and Aliyah candidates. We've opened transit facilities at 5 sites along the border of the Ukraine and other neighboring countries. Once candidates receive eligibility from the consulate, they are turned to our senior representatives and brought to the transit facilities where we provide all necessary services for food, lodging, first aid assistance until their flight to Israel. We are immediately preparing for the absorption of over 3,000 Aliyah candidates in the first wave, but clearly we expect more. As we speak, our first flight of 100 Olim are preparing to arrive at the beginning of this week. We do not also see a rise in Aliyah demand. We do see a rise, from the other former Soviet republics, Belarus, Russia as well. In addition to those who call into our emergency hotline, we are also reaching out to some 24,000 other contacts of ours that we've gathered in the past few years. These are people who are participated in the Ukraine in our Jewish agency programs, such as summer camps, Sunday schools, programs like Marcel. We're reaching out to every single one of them to understand their situation. Sorry, don't know when I got cut off there. We're also doing together with Christian organizations, particularly the United, I'm just losing my mind, Rabbi Eckstein's organization. So next slide, please. Here you can see the first group of Olim preparing to cross the borders ahead of their Aliyah. As you can see and imagine, you've heard, those who are flocking leave to face with huge traffic jams on the roads. We're trying to prepare ahead of time as much as possible, but this is really a changing situation and challenging. So we've faced so many different challenges that it is really impossible to keep up for our staff. Our major concern of ours is not just the immediate rescue, but also the long-term absorption of Olim in Israel. Many of those Olim have had to leave within minutes without anything on their backs and are really in day-long transits without any particular personal means. So we can go to the next slide. And also we are concerned about taking care of the many program participants, the young people that we have in Israel from the Ukraine. As you can see through these various programs, we have nearly 800 young men and women that are in Israel now that we are trying to facilitate a communications need for them with their families in the Ukraine. Next slide. So I would tell you that we are in a crisis unlike we've never seen in our lifetimes in the 21st century. What is at stake is not just the Ukraine and the Ukrainian Jewish community, but Jewish communities everywhere. And that world order that has allowed us as Jews to flourish. This is a global challenge. It requires a global response. You can see here our evolving estimates of funds. This was as of yesterday. I'm sure it's higher today. It's over $20 million. There are two things that I know are for certain. First, that those needs will only grow. And second, I know that the enormous comfort in the fact that you and all of our partners will rise to the challenge, as you have always done so in the past. On a personal note, I'd like to thank the colleagues in the field. There's over 80 employees of the Jewish Agency on the ground or at the border trying to process all of this. They're shown unwavering dedication to the cause, to saving the lives of Jews. They're working day and night. I've talked to a few of them. I've had personal calls with people who are saying, can you help get my friends out of the Ukraine? I can tell you every one of those calls are being answered. So this is an ongoing enterprise. We expect it not to get better before it gets worse. And what I would say to all of you in St. Louis and everywhere else is we thank you for your everyday support, but clearly this is an enormous need that none of us anticipated 2 and 3 weeks ago. Our work goes on globally. We expect a massive aliyah, not only from the Ukraine, but we're expecting it from Russia, as I said, in Belarus and other parts of the Soviet republics, as well as what we've done in Ethiopia and other parts in the past. So with that, I thank you, and I tried to do that within my time frame. So I turn it back to you all.
Michael, thank you. I'm Charles Lowenhaupt, and I'm glad we can all come together under the auspices of the Federation. This is indeed a time for unity, and it is heartening to see the world reaffirming a commitment to democratic ideals, all of this coming out of the tragedy and crisis that Michael's referred to. In this spirit, everyone seems to be asking, how can we help? I have a 74-year-old cousin pricing flights from Virginia to Warsaw to join the fighters in Ukraine. For most of us, that is impractical. What is practical is helping those who are helping. The American Joint Distribution Committee has been helping for more than 100 years and is leading the way with JAFI and others in Ukraine. The joint itself was founded in 1914 by some wealthy Jewish families, at least one of whom was a St. Louisan. St. Louisans have been involved in the joint ever since. I've known joint since 1968, when as a junior in college, I was offered a summer job in Paris by the joint, which I'd never heard of. And I ended up being sent to Tehran instead of Paris, and there worked with the Jewish community in the ghetto and saw what a huge difference joint made over many years in the lives of Iranian Jews. I now serve on the board of the JDC. I was reintroduced to the organization by an Australian, a Holocaust survivor whose family was actually saved by joint and moved to Australia. The more I see the organization, the more I realize that its help is critical to so many people, Jews and non-Jews around the world. JDC is delivering relief and welfare to those in need in Israel and worldwide, and now most relevantly in Ukraine. Now is really the time for all of us to stand up and be on the side of right by doing all we can do to fight for what is right and oppose what we know is wrong. We all see the heroism of the young Jewish president of Ukraine and his colleagues, of the grandmothers and the old people standing up to soldiers, of the fathers who take wife and children to the Polish border and then turn around and go back into battle. What joint staff and volunteers in Ukraine are doing right now should be further inspiration to all of us and a testament to human spirit and bravery. While we cannot stand up, we cannot all stand up to tanks or meet a refugee family at the border, we can support those who are helping the brave Ukrainians. Ellie Marcel is the Joint Director of Global Partnerships, Global Resource Development for Joint. She is here to give a briefing on what the staff and volunteers are now doing in and for Ukraine, how they are helping. Ellie, will you please give us some details?
Of course, I'm just going to share my screen in the hope that you can all see that. So I want to start with a thank you to Charles, a thank you to all of you, a thank you to Brian, to Mindy, to Amy for inviting me to join you this evening and to share a bit about JDC and the work that we're doing in the region. For those of you who I have not had a chance to yet meet, my name's Ellie Marcel and I've been working at JDC for about 4.5 years, and I serve as JDC's liaison to St. Louis. I want to reiterate what Brian said at the top, what Michael said. We could not have responded on Thursday of last week in the way that we responded had it not been for the generous support of Federation of St. Louis, of all of you. We were able to quickly shift, and I'll talk about that in a moment, because of you and because of your support last week and last year and for the last however many years we've been in partnership. And I believe it's if it's not 100, it's close to 100. So this story that I'm sharing with you is your story too. You are making this work happen. I wish I was here today for better reasons. The scope and the scale of the crisis are yet to be determined, but from what we have seen in the past few days, this is a full-blown war that comes with destruction and many casualties. It is also important to mention that this crisis is happening on top of 2 other crises, one of which is COVID, which continues to spread rapidly in the region. Just to give you a sense, Omicron hit the shores of Ukraine about 2 weeks ago. It started surging about 2 weeks ago, and about 34% of the Ukrainian population at that point was fully vaccinated. And the second one is the ongoing economic crisis, which has gotten so much worse over the past few months as a result of the tensions on the border. To give you a sense, this was 2 weeks ago when these supplies were available. Sugar has increased by about 75%, oil by 90%, and the average utility bill by about 60%. My colleague overseeing our work in the region, her name's Shira Ganesh, she opened a briefing this week and she just said, the situation is becoming worse every day. Ukraine is home to one of the largest Jewish communities in Europe, with a population of 200,000 Jews. It has an incredibly rich and also complicated Jewish history. For the past 30 years, since the fall of the Soviet Union, JDC has been working in the region together with Federation, focusing on saving Jewish lives and building Jewish life. Prior to the conflict, JDC, with your help, provided humanitarian aid, including food, medicine, winter relief, and home care to 37,000 Jewish elderly, many of whom are survivors, and 2,500 vulnerable children and young families across Ukraine. These JDC clients we serve together have lived through Nazism, communism, and now face yet another harsh reality. JDC has a strong presence on the ground. We have offices in Kyiv, Donetsk, Odessa, and Kharkiv. We have 18 welfare centers or chesed centers and 4 JCCs. Our aid reaches Jews in 1,000 different locations. About 75,000 Jews of the 200,000 access JDC services, this was before last week, including community building and capacity building programs like JCC's, youth movements, volunteer networks, and leadership training. This infrastructure and the boots on the ground, which you have been fundamental in establishing, is what has allowed us to act quickly and effectively at times of crisis exactly like this one. Over the past few weeks, we've been scenario planning and stockpiling food, medicine, PPE, and other basic humanitarian items. The events of last week drastically shifted our operation. And while the worst of our scenarios became reality, we were ready to act and navigate through this fog of war. So what exactly are we doing? We continue to do everything possible to maintain the high level of care to the vulnerable elderly and young families, despite the many issues on the ground. Many of these clients are bedridden and completely depend on JDC, on you, and on their home care worker. Despite the challenges of transport and curfews, we are seeing heroic actions by our home care workers, many of whom are local Ukrainians who have their own families, who are dealing with the trauma of war and are electing to stay, to move in with their clients so that they can ensure their care. These are the righteous Gentiles of today and of our time. We have hotlines and call centers with local volunteers in Ukraine, Israel, and Moldova, so people can call and get help and updated information 24/7. We are preparing for mass displacement. All of our welfare centers have been converted into emergency transit hubs with supplies like food, water, mattresses, and clothing. This is where people are staying for one night or for a few hours during their very long and uncertain journeys towards the border and getting a little bit of respite. Over the last few days, we have taken over 1,000 people in buses, including elderly Jews and vulnerable families, from Odessa to Romania through Moldova. And we are working on similar operations in Poland, Hungary, and across Europe, where JDC is active. We are set up at various border points, ensuring that Jews have someone to meet them at the border. 2 of my colleagues who were stationed at the border of Moldova and Ukraine explained the process of what they're seeing. And I'm going to put this all together so you see how all the pieces come together. People who are evacuating are calling the hotlines, right? And they're receiving information about what routes to take, about how to get to borders, about which border stop to go to because the line might be shorter. They're receiving this all in real time. They're also receiving information about where the chesed centers are located en route so they can stop off for some respite and to replenish supplies. Once they get to the border, JDC meets them in this incredibly vulnerable moment. Many of the families are saying goodbye to their fathers, the sons, the grandfathers who have to stay behind. We then we greet them, we welcome them, we take them to hotels or places of shelter, and we offer them food, medicine, and the supplies that they need. We then ensure that they have these supplies and assistance for the following days, and we help them to determine their next steps. We are also working within the Jewish communal infrastructure within these countries like Moldova, Hungary, Poland, Romania, and others, where JDC also has a presence. What this means in reality is that in some cases, the children who cross the borders with their mothers, grandmothers, are being put into the Jewish schools for a few hours or for a day, just so that the adults can take a breath and determine what their next steps are and plan for that moment. One of the consistent messages that I'm hearing from my Ukrainian colleagues and the JDC clients is how much they feel the care and concern of American Jewry in this moment, of you. As Brian mentioned at the start of this call, this is a true Kol Yisrael Aravim Ze Bazeh moment. All Jews are responsible for each other. It is one of my honors at JDC to relay the messages of these clients and these wishes and these wishes back to you. And so I'm going to stop talking right now and show a video that was filmed in Kharkov today. And Brian, that'll be the end of the presentation once the video has shown. So I'm hoping the technology will work.
Hey yo, hey yo, hey yo. Shalom Aleinu, Orevu Shalom Aleinu, Orevu Shalom Aleinu, Le'akulam. Orevu Shalom Aleinu, Orevu Shalom Aleinu, Orevu Shalom Aleinu, Le'akulam. Salam Aleinu, Le'akol ha'olam. Salam, salam, salam aleinu le'akol ha'olam. Salam, salam.
Thank you, Ellie and Michael. As you all can see, the situation is evolving and growing, and the needs are extreme. And in dire situations such as this, our national system through JAFI comes up with the cash support needed to address the crisis that is unfolding. JAFI worked with our partners at JAFI and JDC and others to determine, at the time they put it together, that upwards of $20 million is needed for immediate and short-term emergency needs. Every federation across North America is then tasked with raising a portion of that total. It's called a fair share amount. Our fair share amount as a community is $300,000. Now, no doubt you saw that we put up a mailbox late last week for the community to contribute to helping the people of Ukraine and help us meet that goal. 100% of the dollars given through this effort will go directly to our partners on the ground, like you saw, dealing with the situation. We are here tonight to ask you to join the over 250 families in St. Louis who have already made a gift of support. If you are willing to give help in Ukraine, let us know right now. Please feel free to unmute yourself and share it with the group, or send a private message chat to Lori Wishney with the amount of your gift. And while we give you a chance to consider your level of support, I'd like to share a video from our third co-chairs who are unable to be here tonight on why they are supporting this effort.
Hello, my name is Tim Stern. My wife Julie and I are proud to co-sponsor this event tonight. 5 years ago, I went on a mission to Ukraine sponsored by the Jewish Federation and the JDC. I saw firsthand the thriving country and its embrace of democracy. We visited many places around Kyiv, including the Babin Yar Holocaust Memorial, which was bombed a few days ago, along with so many other parts of the city. It's heartbreaking to see the destruction of a beautiful country and the suffering of millions of people. Please join us in making a gift to support all the people impacted by this war. We stand with Ukraine.
The Sterns have given us permission to announce that their support is $5,000. Who else will join Julie and Tim and the hundreds of others that have already given to stand up for Ukraine? Please, if you'd like, you can take a moment to say something, or you can private message or put it in the chat right now.
Brian?
Yes.
Marie and I will give 5,000.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barry, who put your gift amount in the chat.
Hey, Barry, it's Mike Siegel. Can I make another comment? Because there was a question in the chat room.
We're going to get to Q&A in just a minute.
Okay, thank you.
We'll give it one more minute and then we'll. Thank you, Rabbi Rose and Polly. Thank you, Dan and Kristen.
Send a check for 1,000 to Lori.
Thank you, Michael.
I got it today, Harvey. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jerry and Sue, and Julie and Greg. Thank you, Sherry. All right.
Hey, Brian,
Yes.
This is Michael Goldstein calling. The Goldstein Family Foundation is happy to support with $40,000.
Thank you and your family very much.
Thank
That is
you.
outstanding. Lester's, thank you so much. Thank you to the Eidelmans, Craig and Jennifer. Thank you guys so much. Gold stickers, thank you. Thank you, Vicky, for adding to the gift that you and Barry had already given. Thank you, Susan. People can continue to do that or to message Lori. Before we move into Q&A, I wanted to take a moment to turn the spotlight over to Adina Rasquez, who's going to share a story that we hope will bring tonight's efforts kind of into full circle. Adina? Let's unmute you first.
I hope it does, because I actually had the privilege of going to the Ukraine in 1997 with a Federation mission. I went along with Tom Green and several others from St. Louis, and we were representing St. Louis at the time. And it had not started in the Ukraine with the transition toward being a democracy. However, I want to tell you, when we arrived at the airport, that was a stark reality of what democracy really is. There were soldiers lined up with machine guns. There were huge dogs, each one standing by someone. It was nothing that would say to you, this is a peaceful place. We stayed at a hotel that was supposedly one of the better hotels in Kyiv. However, you could not make your own phone call. You had to arrange a phone call at a specific time so that someone could hear you and monitor your call. And that was the only way that you had to tell who the person was, how you were related. And that was actually the only way that you could make a telephone call. And I just want to show you this one picture that I had a number of them, but I hope you can see it. And I'm sure this place now is in rubbles, but you can see that how the Soviet society was part of this whole area. And that's a statue of Lenin. Unbelievable that if you were probably looking at it today, you probably wouldn't be seeing a thing. We visited Babi Yar, and that was an unbelievable experience. And I know you just heard again about Babi Yar, but I was there before anything was built. And all there was a pit. And the thing was, it was in this pit, this huge pit was in the middle of town. And all you saw around were homes and apartments, and it really resembled our own Forest Park. There was no way that everybody in that whole town didn't know what was going on. And now they've attacked it again. We then went to very many Jewish places in the Ukraine, and we traveled to out-of-town places. We sat on a bus And what did you see from the bus? You saw people with babushkas and with aprons and horse-drawn carriages, horse-drawn wagons, and they were carrying big milk containers delivering milk. For me, this was 1997, and they were carrying milk. This is the way they were delivering milk to each home. We certainly and urgently need to help our fellow Jews in this catastrophe, whether by helping them get to Israel if they choose, as many are, or helping them at best we can to survive wherever they go in the Ukraine. And I would just like to add one little note that I actually saw a lot what the JDC as well as the Jewish Federation did in Ukraine in 1997. It was unbelievable the amount of work that they did for all of the people then. Thank you.
Thank you, Adina, for sharing. And thank you to everyone who's continued to give, reach out to us. We're going to take a couple of minutes now, since we have a couple of people who are experts and may have some information to share, to answer questions. We have a couple in the chat, but if you have others, please put them in now. One of the questions was, what are we doing, or what are you doing on the ground to help those people who are displaced but not interested in leaving, want to stay in the Ukraine? What kinds of services and support are being offered to them?
I'm happy to answer that first. So all of our humanitarian aid work continues to exist in Ukraine and along the borders. So the hotlines, the call centers are not just for people who want to leave, they're also for people to stay. So people can call us, they can tell us where they are and what their needs are. And in fact, not only are people calling us, but we are actually calling our clients who we know are in the area and are not leaving, and we call them with relative frequency just to make sure that they have what they need and they can get the services that they need. The Chesed centers that are emergency transit hubs, people can come whether they're leaving or going, and access the services and the supplies that are being kept over there.
And so I would say that I'm a donor in Cleveland, just like you people are in St. Louis. So I would tell you, you would be very proud to see what the professionals are doing on the ground from all the organizations. It's not about JDC or the Jewish Agency or Chabad or the Fellowship of Christian and Jews. The amazing cooperation of the professionals on the ground that are actually there would astonish you and give you great pride to understand that your dollars truly make the difference between life and survival. And so as it relates to those who cross the border and want to make Aliyah, they come to the Jewish Agency professionals. We put them in housing and we provide them the necessary arrangements, however long it takes to be able to do that. As I said, right now we're processing 3,500. The rest of those who wish to move on to other areas, we're all working to find them housing or other parts of the Jewish community in these other areas to go and get support. And certainly, I would never say not that the JDC is doing incredible work. They're doing incredible work in terms of the sustainability of those on the border. And you would take great pride in watching the professionals, do what they have to do for their individual organizations. They make sure that everybody has got food, shelter, and the ability to survive. And so we're finding them places to go in transit. Maybe they'll return someday. Certainly many have that desire. But in the interim, our job is to find the ability for them who wish to go to Israel, which is growing by the day. Not only the aspect of having the opportunity to get processed to do that, but finding housing when they get to Israel. So we're working in cooperation with all the organizations, and we want every individual Jew who has a desire to stay, go, or go someplace else to find immediate housing and immediate support.
Michael, you had wanted to address something before.
Yeah.
Did you want to? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just, really, I'm telling you, I've seen this. I got videos. I'm talking to people on the ground. I'm just saying the amazing cooperation of the professionals. I don't care what their work title is. I don't care which organization they represent. The amazing commitment of people who are there on the border to work to save Jews Right now, it's not about an organization. It is about everybody doing what they can. And as a donor, where you say, is my dollars making a difference? I would tell you, dig deeper. Your dollars are saving lives, and we have no idea, how this is going to end or when this is going to end. All we know is that there are people trying to get to the border. All of us are trying to assist them, and the amazing work of the individual professionals that are on the ground is heartwarming and astonishing.
I had another question, and that was, and Ellie, you might be able to talk about this, but kind of there's this question about how do you really, how do people come in and help? There's a war going on. How do you get people across the border? I think if there's a 1-minute answer, we can go about that, but I think that there's some real both concern in that question about the people who are willing to do that, and just it's a war, there's a border. How, is it through the, yeah.
I'm muted.
I mean,
The quick answer is that the borders are open. So if you are able to leave, you can get across the border, but there are often lots of lines. People have been camped out for days. It's difficult to know which border point you should go to get across a border. So there are logistics, but look, this is wartime and people are desperate. So people will get to the borders and will get to where they need to go. And I think that's that's to reiterate Michael's point, is that these people come in there are absolutely desperate, and the Jewish community is there to greet them and to give them whatever they need, and it is a huge comfort.
Yeah, so I'd also say we have many shlichim, many who have worked in the Ukraine from Israel. We have a number of Israelis that are coming to the border to go into where they were and to find the people that they had relationships with. So part of it is, at least from the Jewish agency perspective, we have a number of Israelis who have volunteered to go in. They're used to working in war zones, unfortunately, and they have this amazing capacity to want to do good.
Yeah, and sorry, I'll only just add, because I think this is the same for JAFI and for JDCs. We've been around for so many years in these communities that most of our staff are local. They're not actually reliant on Americans coming in, right? They are local staff who are equipped and ready to do it, and they're at both sides of the border. So we have our Moldovan staff in Moldova and our Ukrainian staff in Ukraine and our Polish staff in Poland. And so that's why this effort is actually about mobilizing infrastructure and systems that already exist because of you.
So there was a question, what can people do aside from just giving money? What else can we do to help?
Well, there's always a political side to everything. The United States government has a position, as it were, and you can certainly write your senators and congressmen. Make no mistake, an individual letter from a constituent to your senator, to your congressman, asking the United States to do more for the Ukrainian government in any way possible, whether it's arming them or providing more relief. And I'm telling you, I've worked a lot of in Washington in my years. It's not when there's a mass writing campaign. When you as an individual take the time to write a letter, write an email, you could make a big difference by showing your elected official that you demand greater support from the U.S. government for the Ukrainian people.
To that end, Ellie, before you jump in, if you're interested in doing something like that, there is something that's new and that we're involved in called the JAFI Advocacy Corps. If you're interested, these are high-level conversations that we need, not a mass of people, but people with access and people who are willing to use their voice to reach out to state and federal officials to really make the case and bring the case, as Michael was saying, not with 5,000 people calling, but getting the right 5 people to make the calls and do what they need to do. If you're interested in that, please reach out to me and let me know. Ellie, did you want to address? Is there anything else that people can do besides?
JDC is apolitical, so we don't take a stance on anything political, and that's partly because right now we're working in Ukraine, in Russia, in Belarus, in Moldova, across Europe. So what I can say is, if you're asking what you can really do to help, the answer at this moment is flexible funds. funds that can go, that can be used to anywhere in this effort. It's wartime. In-kind goods are not so helpful because then you have to figure out the transportation and getting the right goods to the right place. The flexibility of funds in this moment is crucial.
And the last thing I would say, and then we're going to wrap up, is that I think Charles mentioned this, Ellie mentioned this, Michael's mentioned this, so is Heschel. We have a very, very long relationship with both JAFI and JDC that goes back to the founding of both of those organizations. As a community, we have had people involved in the leadership and involved intimately for years. And right now, Heschel and Charles are those standard bearers, but we're looking for the people who want to be involved and represent us there and represent American Jewry around that table. If that's something that you're interested in, please let me know. The last thing I want to just share is most of you are aware that our partnership region of Yokneam and Megiddo has been really instrumental in resettling particularly Ethiopians. Well, we just got an email right before this Zoom started, and yesterday the first 2 families from Ukraine were resettled in Yokneam, and they are prepared and expecting at least 40 or 50 more families. This is something that this region does. They resettle New Olim to Israel, and they have opened up their hearts to the Ethiopians, and now they are opening up their hearts and their homes to the Ukrainians. So we have a very personal connection, and those of you who are interested for Israel at 75 in October of 2023, come with us and come visit the region, and let's meet some of those families together. So at this point, I want to say that the support that you guys have shown has been overwhelming. We are now over $375,000 in support. And as I said, when this started last week, we were asked to give a certain amount based on the needs of $20 million. But as you saw, those needs continue to climb. And every dollar that is raised is going to go to support the work that JAFI and JDC and a couple of others are doing. So I want to thank you all so much for all of your support, for being here. Please reach out to us. If you have additional questions and want to stay on for a minute, you're welcome to. But we'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight and for all of your support to help us help Jews around the world. Thank you all very much, and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.